Welcome back. We are commencing our conversation, our first conversation for the morning with attorney at law Richard Dickie Bradley. He is here to discuss with us, first of all, everything that has to do with, one, the legal aspect of not permitting persons with COVID-19 to participate in the upcoming general elections. Secondly, the rights of prisoners in the context of the general elections and the COVID situation and what have you, and any other topics that are related that we may throw at him while we have him with us this morning. That being said, good morning, Dickie.
Morning, my brother, and good morning to the lady in the house.
All right, so now, I think first of all, the conversation that we should kick off with has to do with the announcement made by the Prime Minister on Friday, whereas he made it clear that persons who have been diagnosed with COVID-19 leading up to or around the time of the general elections are prohibited from exercising that vote. I know that the counterpoint has been raised that it's a matter of perhaps, how do we say, you're preventing someone from exercising their franchise, right? My understanding from what he explained is that your constitutional rights are not absolute. I believe those are his words exactly. And that in some cases, those rights can be suspended or waived based on the situation at hand. Let's begin there. Let's get from you a clear definition of what that means in the context of the upcoming vote.
Well, let's start off by saying that the right of persons who are medically ill to exercise their franchise is not prohibited. It's the Prime Minister who is prohibiting them from voting. There is no law that he quoted or referred to say, well, I'm just following what the law says. So I think for your viewers, it should be clear that no law prevents a person from exercising their right to vote. I think we should start there. I think we should also say that there's a possibility that, I was going to say the second most powerful man, but he somehow is still the most powerful man, even though leadership of the party has passed off Patrick Faber. That when he says that, chances are he's going to come with some kind of hocus-pocus legislation. He can't go to the House because there is no House of Representatives. And the section that speaks of the ability to summon the House of Representatives, even though it has been dissolved, is not a section that gives rise to this matter. That would be like in the event of a war or earthquake or so on, massive devastation or major insurrection. So there's a possibility that we would see some kind of legislation. I know that the opposition is looking very seriously at this matter. They have as you would know, they have a exceptional team of attorneys who are just waiting to see if there will be legislation. No, that is a legal position.
Can we just add into perspective, though? Because the Prime Minister did note the mandatory regulations of people who are confirmed as COVID-19 positive. You are legally required to self-isolate at home and not allowed to move or leave that premises. So there is something to say that there is a law that these persons who are positive are not allowed to leave under any circumstances, even if that includes voting.
It doesn't say the last part. It just says that because...
But there were no exceptions included in the law.
No, you don't have to have exceptions included, otherwise there'd be a long list of exceptions. Your right to your this, your right to your that, and so on. But that is where I was going. I wanted to say that although legally there is no law that specifically says if you got COVID you can't vote. There is no law that says that. that there would have to be some kind of law. It can't be a law coming from the House of Representatives because there is no House. So they would try and maybe squeeze it under the Quarantine Act. And in fact, you know that recently we all were taken aback to see that one of the laws that were passed under the Quarantine Act was an interesting one where then the order Manzanero to hand up the names of everybody to the police, not to the Ministry of Health, to the police, who we all know they have a problem with obeying the law. So, yes, there is that slight little major concern that this particular infectious disease called COVID-19 requires those who are proven to be affected to either self-isolate or mandatorily be in isolation for a short period. And let me quickly add this, that right as things stand today, this morning, the international news is absolutely frightened because Paris in France, has reimposed a massive lockdown. And all across the European countries, they are frightened because there's a major resurgence of the virus, including our beloved United States of America. 50,000 people a day are showing up with infections.
They recently passed the 8 million threshold in terms of the number of persons who have been affected by coronavirus.
Okay, that is major, that's major. So, we locked down when we never have no virus in the country. Now that the virus is spreading all across Belize, the country of Belize, we open up. We make the plane and bring in people from the very country. They experience a massive upsurge in the virus, and then to turn around and tell we that for we fault, we spread the virus to ourselves, that we did do it.
Well,
so on the one hand,
is a fair statement, though.
Sorry?
That to an extent is a fair statement because even while the airport was locked, we were still transmitting it internally.
No, I'm not there with that. Because one plane may come whenever come to San Pedro, and some people may bring it whenever bring it to San Pedro. And
yeah, but you have no proof of that, Dickie.
All of a sudden the border jumpers. Where's the evidence?
That's a speculation that
I know
people agree, but you can't say that with certainty.
The Prime Minister said that he was
There's a health investigation that has to take place to trace it back. You can't say it. I can't say it.
Excuse me, since when do journalists believe government investigations or government responses or government claims? No, man, please. These are people who habitually lie to us and deceive us.
We can't deny
we have
that.
A different.
We can't deny that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that your version is the right version.
No, my version. The Prime Minister said at a press conference that he was properly briefed that a plane had landed.
Let's take it back to the conversation.
Yeah, but I wanted to say, I was leading up to the fact that on the one hand, you have this problem where we are opening up at a time when we should be double vigilant. But at the same time, we are saying a relatively small handful of people will not be allowed to vote. No law says so. They are in quarantine. You want to say to me that our brothers and sisters in Jamaica, who only recently had their general elections and made provision for COVID persons to vote, you want to say they're crazy or something? They did it in Trinidad, they did it in Guyana. Now, what is our situation in Belize? The proper thing to do, rather than just arbitrarily attempt to deprive people of their right to vote, a right which you only get once every 5 years. I just don't know a right where why I want to go smoke on these cigarette on the veranda. So this is a very serious right. In fact, an election was won in 1993 by 4 votes. An election was won by 4 votes, not 4 constituency. 1 vote in the Khaled division, I think 2 down south. So this is a very, very serious matter, and the opposition needs to watch this very carefully. They need to look at where are these persons who are going to be deprived, where are they clustered? Where are they in numbers? Because it could make a difference in a couple of divisions in an election which might be tight. This is a dog fight going to go on in election.
Let's put the numbers into focus then.
Okay.
Right? So if we're presently at 1,099 active cases, for argument's sake, this is men, women, and children. Let's just keep it as broad as that, right?
Okay.
These persons are spread across the country. They're not concentrated in any one particular location aside from the huge numbers that are in the north. We know that for a fact. However, the remainder of those persons are spread across the country. You're looking at 31 constituencies, right? The question then is, as you rightfully said, how impactful would that be on voter turnout on November 11th? That is the question.
Okay. The question is, if I could repeat myself, that elections have been won and lost on the basis of like less than what right?
4. Okay.
So that speaks for itself. So let's make this point to Marlene and my brother. The proper thing to do, instead of being arbitrary and depriving these persons of their right to cast their vote, especially where their vote could count, is that you consulted all the parties who are taking part in the election and says, listen, we have a challenge, we have a problem. We can't let COVID-infected persons walk into an election room where there are persons who may not wish to be exposed in circumstances like those. My understanding in Jamaica is like, let's say the polling station closed at 7. They stayed open an additional hour to facilitate only COVID persons, where you have the ability to control everything. Because let me make this point. There are over 100,000 voters who are eligible to vote, and chances are they are going to come out and vote. Now, every voter who comes out to vote, I don't want to use no word like, well, they are symptomatic or something. Well, let's say they are carrying the virus and there is no...
Everybody potentially has it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, man. Now, listen to what happened. When they go into the booth and they take out their ID card, hopefully the officer don't have to hold it. They could just show it. That would help. What about picking up the pen or pencil to mark the ballot paper? What about one giving the ballot paper to the other one so that you could go and mark it and put it in? What about holding the ballot box? What about doing things? They're all exposed, you know. But there's no focus on that. The elections office is trying to deal with that, but that is, we're not telling the public how they could deal with that. Go in with your gloves, carry your own pen. There's no law that prevents you from carrying your own pen for mark on ballot paper.
Well, I wanna talk about the use of pencils a bit later on.
Yeah.
But let's go back to
how
you can exclude people from voting, how it's possible.
It is unfair to exclude them because there are several mechanisms that can be put in place to protect them and to protect those who will be there. I just mentioned the Jamaican model where they said if the election time is 7 o'clock, they will stay back and to facilitate those people. There are other ways, Marlene.
You're an attorney, and I know that you choose your words very wisely. You said unfair, not illegal or unconstitutional.
I made the point already that it's not in any law that you can prevent them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is it also allowable for it to be?
No.
Even under public health measures?
There is no law that tell you can't exercise your right to vote.
Okay.
People fight for this right in other countries.
No, my question is...
But let me just finish the good point that both of you are actually trying to zero in on. Can it be done?
Yeah.
Yes, it was done in Jamaica, in Belize, which is much smaller.
I was asking, can it be done or can it be allowed that they not vote?
That they not vote?
Yeah.
No, I would hope that a couple of them go to court.
My question is, can it be legally challenged in court?
Yeah.
That is my question.
Yeah.
So if, for instance, the opposition decides, you know what, we're not in agreement with what the Prime Minister said on Friday by way of that public announcement, we are going to take this before the court and have the court determine whether or not these individuals should be disenfranchised based on their medical situation, or the Prime Minister is perfectly in order for saying that they are disqualified by virtue of that medical condition.
Because What is the objective? The objective is we have an infectious disease and we have persons who we know are infected and therefore can transmit. Yes? All right. You will say to me human ingenuity, the brilliance that is within the government and within the opposition parties, if I could include the smaller parties, that we can come up with solutions to this problem? That we can't say, listen, you have these schools which are going to be voting stations. We're going to set aside one school in Belize City, or one on South Side, one on North Side. This is the
just for COVID people.
Which will be just for COVID people under full medical control and management. We do not have that ability to set up a room where a person can come and vote without infecting us. You don't have to come way in. You come to the door, you show your ID, you are given your ballot paper, you mark it and you put it right in the little box which is right there in front of the representatives of all the political parties. I am shocked to think that we even think that we don't have the ability to come up with some other alternative way without having to say, why, you know, like...
Let me dive a bit deeper here, because we're talking about, what you have outlined is finding a way to accommodate in-person voting for COVID-19 patients. The Prime Minister was asked about the proxy system, which he described as hugely complicated.
Cumbersome.
I missed that. He what?
He described as hugely complicated to be able to have these persons vote by proxy. Now, I know that there's a specific group of people who can vote by proxy. What would it take to add COVID-19 patients to that list so that they proceed with proxy voting?
I'm thinking that the law that gives that authority is the parent legislation and not a statutory instrument. So it would mean that there was poor planning when the election was not being factored into what is happening, because all it would take was to add persons with an infectious disease, including COVID, allowed to vote by proxy. You're only talking 1,000 proxy man, come on. That is real. Listen, I don't want to be...
But I mean, can it be changed now? The issue here is that the House is also dissolved, and so that's where...
the legislation takes place.
But that is like taking a big mall to try and walk on the mosquito. You're going to search for a complicated solution to an elementary problem. We've just outlined two what in Jamaica did by having a special period for COVID people. If your figures are roughly right, 1,000 people we can provide for across the country. We don't deserve to be running our nation, man. Sure. We can find a solution to that.
No, I'm asking, and that's why I'm asking about what is the possibility.
You the COVID person. You can put on whatever the Ministry of Health may require you to fully put on. It's just to mark an X, you know.
Let me put this out there, because I'm not sure how well this has either been articulated or how people have grasped the two concepts. The Chief Elections Officer was on this very show 2 Mondays ago, where a similar question was posed to her. And if I recall her response along these lines, she was saying that all persons will be treated as if though they have COVID-19, but you would not be prevented from casting your vote. They would simply implement certain measures, including the sanitization of pens and what other items that you will be using.
Yeah.
That was the position at the time.
Well then, my brother, listen to this.
So to have the PM come and say, well,
yes,
you're not going to be allowed to vote altogether. You're looking at two completely different streams of thought.
Yes.
Well, with the Prime Minister having the authority in this sense to say, no, that it won't happen.
Well, then it brings us back to Donald Trump and the scientists and medical experts in his country. He has decided, whatever they say, I know, they pay no attention to them. I make up my own decision. You are now telling me. I was not aware of this because I was not aware of this. You mean the expert, the Chief Elections Officer, having looked at the situation, says to the nation of Belize, we can handle it.
Accommodation.
And then suddenly the Prime Minister won't come last week Friday, like 3 weeks before the general elections, and said that out. Then we would have to say, my brother, sorry, we would have to say that there's some political agenda involved. We would have to say to the opposition, you go and look and see how many people in your constituency are claimed to have had this virus, because what they are trying to do is use this as an excuse to deprive you of X amount of votes.
But wouldn't that affect both parties though? Because if we're looking theoretically at 1,000 potential voters, right? Those 1,000 voters don't belong to any one party.
No, but one vote could make a difference.
They belong to various parties, and some may even abstain on that day.
I can't use the other finger because it's close, but one vote makes a difference.
And every person should have that right to be able to exercise.
Listen, you know what we need to do? We need to borrow from our brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Black lives matter. Every vote matters. Every person has a right to vote. I am sick. I want to vote. You tell me what all I am required to. You want to put me in a full plastic with a tube out like when you dive, when you snorkel? You tell me, I will comply.
Let me ask you this, Dickie.
So you noted that Jamaica's system accommodated them 1 hour after. That's one of the ways that we've seen it done right here in the Caribbean.
I would think.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm sure that these were things that were looked at ahead of time. But I also want to note something else that the Prime Minister said at his press conference. When he spoke of and I can't remember the exact words, but when he spoke of the possibility of having COVID-19 patients go vote, that it may actually make other people not go vote because they have a fear of...
They don't vote together. They will not mingle. They will not jingle. You will have the regular voters need not have any concern that a known person is in the line or they could buck up or touch or anything. You need to make that clear. Goodness me, I'm repeating myself. You mean we as a nation don't have the ability to make 1,000 people across the country go exercise the right to vote? We're not asking for the one dance contest where the dance to Otis wedding, you know. We're saying with all the precautions, this just to mark an X on a paper, fold it and drop it in our box, Rasta. It's not even going to be in the box with the others. Those boxes will be sealed and counted. You could provide all the precautions. Come on, Belize people, we are not stupid. There is no need to deprive people of their right to vote based on the fact that they have a disease. Because right here in this...
I think that part of the conversation has to be that it has to be personal for all of us. The question as to whether or not they will, how they will, if it's accommodated, if it's shifted in anywhere, anyone will take up a legal challenge. I can be infected next week and not be eligible to vote, as can you or any other person. We don't know who will be in that active cases group come November 11th. So we're talking 1,000 right now. It could be less, it could be more.
Yes.
So it is an important discussion. But I guess it just goes back, and I hear your point of view very clearly, and I hear your suggestions as to how to accommodate in what's been done in other places. But we have to look at how you change a decision that's already been made. So there's the opposition who is supposed to weigh in. What other ways can we undo a decision that has already been made if the masses of people say, we not do with this?
No, but it's not fair to drag the masses in because the masses are not going to be exposed. It's unfair for
No. I mean, if the mass of people say we are not okay with suppressing this group of people from voting.
Yes, man, I have faith in our people that once they are properly informed, let us go by the will. Where they say the voice of the people is the voice of God, vox populi. We just need to explain to people, darling, no one get exposed to no virus. The people who have the virus will not come to any polling station that is being opened for the general public.
The people who knowingly have the virus.
Let me put it
That's
this
the
way.
key part.
And that is the thing, right? Because first of all,
you can't provide for the unknown.
Okay, but then it would still be exposed. Either way you look at it. I say this, right? Like, for instance, we have heard that, for argument's sake, for every one person who tests positive, there are X amount of others out there who do not know that they're asymptomatic of coronavirus and perhaps are spreading it.
That may be something for Europeans.
When you go to the polls on November 11th, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be required to stand 6 feet apart in your place in line before you reach the actual booth. The point is, you do not know if that individual in front of you is asymptomatic or not. You do not know that.
Yeah,
so you're still exposing yourself out there.
Everyday life, that is the situation, and the vast majority of our people are being very careful. Look on the chair away like with a bandido. I can't see, only could see how, only could see.
I can't read your face. This is troubling me.
You can't see how mischievous I look behind my
I usually know the mischievous look ahead of time. But we're going to take a break. And I know we're getting there. And by all means, you know, this is a conversation that we want people to chime in on as well. So we are live on Facebook. If you have a question to throw in on this discussion, let us know. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be continuing the conversation with Attorney Dickie Bradley about the right for COVID-19 positive persons to vote. And we'll be moving on to some other topics as well. So please stay tuned.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
Center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
I want to bring to this conversation this morning a point that was raised earlier, perhaps during the commercial break. We are looking, or we have seen, a succession in the leadership of the United Democratic Party, where last Thursday, Patrick Faber was installed as the leader of the UDP. And my question is there anywhere in law, in the Constitution of Belize, that would then require him to take an oath of office as the Prime Minister of the country until the elections? How does that work, Dickie?
Well, anytime you use the word law, it always bring up with Charles, I think it's Charles Dickens had given his view. He studied law, you know. This is the man who wrote Tale of Two Cities, Hard Time, and all those fabulous books out of Britain. But the quotation, I don't want to use it on television, you know. He was disparaging of the law is and so on. So, listen, the Constitution of Belize says that it can be found at section 37 for your viewers then who can Google up thing and check it. I think it's section 37 says that the Governor General has to appoint the leader of the party that commands the majority in the House. That's the person that becomes Prime Minister. We don't have a presidential system where we vote for the president. We don't vote for the Prime Minister. You go and vote for everybody, and whichever party has the majority, the leader of that party is Prime Minister. In some countries, and Belize had it one time, in some countries you have a coalition. When Golson had broke off from the UDP over the heads of agreement over the maritime areas matter, he formed his own party and he joined up, and we had a coalition government of sorts. So it's the leader of a party that commands the majority in the House. Now you know that we are on the verge of being a little Mickey Mouse country. You know, if you did Alice in Wonderland in school, when she went down the rabbit hole, she came across some of the strangest of things, including somebody who says that words only mean what they say mean when they use it. So you could understand a certain word and so on and so forth. So let me mention that it is a weird thing in the recent history of Belize. And I know both of you have looked at this matter from the time it started to happen. First, you have this incredible situation where the Honorable Patrick Farber is the Deputy Prime Minister of this young nation. The Right Honorable Dean Barrow is the Prime Minister. And when time to decide who to pass the party over, the Prime Minister wanted nothing to do with Patrick Farber. Don't forget the convention that was held where John Saldiva strongly beat Patrick Farber based on the massive support of the Prime Minister and his the people who he have wronged him. Some of them even gone public and condemned Patrick Farber for this and that and so on. So that is a weird situation, my boy. You work with somebody all this while. You don't say to him, boy, they cut it, my brother. We are need to do something. No, I don't say nothing. When I know that you have to move away and move yourself, you will undermine this man. This young man who has basically devoted his whole life to the United Democratic Party. You do everything, and you succeed in undermining him, just thanks to Lev Derman that the other candidate get dropped. Now that brings us to your question. In a proper democracy, Dean Barrow, sorry, I don't want to be disrespectful. The Right Honorable Dean Barrow has now gone the further step. There is not this lot of confusion about Honorable Farber is the leader-elect. He's not the leader-elect anymore. He is the leader. The Prime Minister, the party leader, hands over the party formally, officially to him. There was no boast that we will win one fourth term and Patrick will carry us through to a glorious victory and we will finally reach heaven where there is milk and honey for every hand over. Big up the man who will leave it. The very man where he undermine and talk bad about. Hands over the party. But then he hang on to being Prime Minister. He still the call press conference. He look for disenfranchised voters where there is no law that you could do it and so. Give Patrick Farber one chance, no man. Let us be able to see him, how he functions as a temporary Prime Minister between now and the 11th of November, because we are being called upon to vote for him, vote for his party in relation to a general election when government will change. Government will change, there is no way this country could go through where they go through for another 5 years. So
well, that's your early predictions. And I know that you have said before, what? Elections are won on election day. So we'll wait to see that one. I just have to correct you. The Deputy Prime Minister at this time is Hugo Pat. And not...
No, but I'm saying at the time of the leadership struggles, you undermine a man who is the leader of the party.
Moving forward, I think that coming back to the issue at hand and talking about voters' rights is a very critical one. You noted before that you feel that there are sufficient grounds for a legal challenge on this issue. Of course, it is always possible that there can be a change of heart and a new system is put in place as well. Let's shift if we can, because I think that one of the other issues that is brewing is looking at the redistricting case that is before the courts. The Belize Peace Movement has filed for an injunction to stay the elections, and we know that the opposition is against having the injunction. What are your thoughts on the redistricting case and whether or not we should hold off the elections and get the redistricting done before?
The redistricting...
Get a ruling first.
A ruling, yes.
The redistricting is an important principle because the Constitution says that the votes, the number of voters in constituencies should be as equal as is possible, no? There is, as you know, or older folks say there are more than one ways to skin a cat. You just have to actually take the knife and go one way. We could, well, first let me say, Marlene, in answer to your question, that I support redistricting. I support the principle that it is unfair for there to be thousands here and hundreds here. But I want to throw in my own mix in this matter. I'm glad you brought it up. I was hoping we could touch the prisons, but it's an important issue. Listen to what I want to say. This will throw you a little bit off field. Michelle Arana was the top scholar when she came out of tertiary education in Belize. She had her pick of where she wanted to study in the UK, in the Caribbean, because she was the #1 scholar. In other words, she got a lot of grey matter. She's brilliant. She is still acting as Chief Justice. Why is she not the Chief Justice of our country? She's a black woman, she's the first woman, she's a brilliant woman, she's been acting in a position, she's not no overseas judge they bring here, she the one and we. I say that because the Garifuna people and the Creole people, they need to be careful and start to watch what is happening to them, you know. They are at the bottom of the social and economic ladder of the country, and it's not getting better for them. Having said that, if we just go pump, why? Port George small, Queen Clare small, mess up small, this one small. Put on here and do this and so. Me to tell you this. Belize City is the home of the Creoles. After this, we got nothing. We can't go to states because states collapse. They won't have less political power. The Creoles, they need to be careful. You need to look at this thing not just in a number.
What do you mean they will have less political power?
Because instead of you have 10 representatives, you can't go by the people right now because they don't represent us. But instead of having 10 representatives, you could have 4. Because they would have to, in order to get the numbers equal.
But you are, if I am to interpret what you're saying, you are ranking that you're saying that the system that currently exists with the people in some areas in Belize City having far greater representation than some of the other parts of the country is just?
I never said that. I'm saying that if you start tampering it along the lines that it's purely numerical, you are going to mess with something which have some serious implications because Marlene,
you're talking socio-cultural or socio-political implications?
More than that, let me bring up something.
But we don't know how it would actually be divided.
No, that is the numbers that the Constitution says.
No, I know what numbers the Constitution says, but I know, but we don't know what a amalgamation of constituencies would look like, or a redistricting of constituencies would look like. We have to get to that point first.
No, you don't know what the geographical, you don't know the geographical how you cut.
Yeah, we don't know where we will.
You do know that you can't have what
you
have.
You do know that 1,000 in one Belize City constituency versus 7,000 in another.
Yeah.
And the inequity that has brought, simply if you do it by numbers, how much money is allocated to constituencies?
No, but
let me go back because we're going into the hypothetical and we'll now get the question answered. The question is, should we proceed with the redistricting case before the election?
Of course not. We have gone to several elections under that system. Yes? It has not shown that it has disenfranchised a group of people. It has not shown that this one really get the hand and then one didn't get the honey. What I was saying to you is that, all right, let's go along your line. There is no way that any Supreme Court in this country would give an injunction to break the general election, which is 3 weeks away. Let me just give you 2 good legal reasons. And remember, we are trying the case out of the court.
I know.
All right. One is that it is the constitution of this country. In other words, there is no secret that elections must be held every 5 years.
Yes.
It could stretch 5 plus 3 months depending on circumstance. Yes. You know that. You don't wait till 3 weeks before a general election to ask a court to violate the separation of powers by getting into what is going on with the legislature. Because, Marlene, the legislature has been dissolved. You don't wait till you dissolve the election and announce one date to say, no, I'm going to stop this whole thing.
So it's ill-timed. The injunction application is ill-timed.
But can you file an injunction before the election date is called?
You know that the election every 5 years? Where are we getting it?
No, I'm asking.
Yes,
because they were saying they had to wait until after the election had been called.
No. Section 20 of the Constitution of Belize says that where your rights are being violated right now, where your rights have been violated already, and where your rights are likely to be violated, you can go to the Supreme Court for redress. So it's not like we have to wait till the last minute to come up with this. There was a recent decision in which the acting Chief Justice, who should be made Chief Justice? No. In which the acting Chief Justice said to the litigants, both of them, both sides, you have rested on your rights. You had, I'll tell you which case. The DPP filed in order to say the Judicial Commission was wrong to bar her from being there, and all in decision is this, that, and so on and so on. Court said, no, you're not going like that. You had ample time to come to court, man. You were elected for a whole year, you wait to get re-elected another year, you wait, and now when the last couple of weeks at the period, then now you come to the court. The law can't be used like that. You can't abuse the law. Yeah? So there is a sacred principle between the executive branch of government and the legislative branch of government. It is allowed that, of course, there is closeness and overlapping. That is the system of government we have. The ministers come from the House. Unfortunately for Belize, the House is so small that the ministers take up nearly everybody. That is the system. There has to be overlap. You can't take a law to the House if it doesn't get the approval of the ministers in cabinet. But when it comes to the judiciary, there is no crossing that line. There is separation of powers. Every major legal decision in the region, the Commonwealth, across the world, is that the judiciary must be entirely separate from the legislature and the executive.
Independent and autonomous. Right?
And independent and as autonomous as they can be. So you can't, the courts are reluctant to get involved in what the legislature is doing, you know, unless
like staying an election.
Right. Like, excuse me, that's what you want? You want riots, you want problem? People are bottled up by a government where, in their view, victimize them, take away their land, take away their scholarship, etc., etc., etc. So there is no likelihood of a court stopping the election. I think that fear in the community. We need to talk to our brothers and sisters in the Belize Peace Movement. They have come up with a very important matter. It shows how slack we are. We're not following the
Now let me ask,
it seems.
So the other problem with the prisons.
My final question regarding the redistricting question that Marlene brought up earlier. So my thing is, this matter has been before the courts, we would say, with ample time for a decision to have been rendered ahead of the actual election date being called. So it now becomes, in my opinion, an exercise that will happen after the elections for whoever wins in preparation of the 2025 general elections, which means then that essentially we have kicked the can down the road once again. Correct?
That is not our fault. That is not the media or... In fact, you know, as you say that, my good friend and my hero, David Gibson, who is not a lawyer, has written an excellent article in the Mandela newspaper. Somebody sent it to me this morning to say, look at this. David is saying that the court, if the court refuses, the higher court will grant the injunction. But remember that the legislature has been dissolved. The court is not going to tell them, get back and have a meeting. The court is not going to trample.
It would mean they have to reinstitute the House.
That now happen. Even the Constitution says it has to be some, I mean, you know, this is something that was foreseen long ago.
Yeah.
So that is not going to happen. There is going to be a general election unless COVID really give the Prime Minister what he's dreaming of, stay there another 6 months or another year. Now about the prisons.
Well, that is our final topic to cover for this morning, and we're quickly running out of time. We are going to be having a subsequent conversation. Let me just, you seem ready to discuss it. Let me hear your thoughts as to what has been unfolding in the past week.
I wanted to say briefly in the compressed time that you're allowing me, I want to say that when you look at what is happening with the police department, and when you look at what has happened and happens with the prison department, and we could mention immigration and lands and customs and so. It is two important issues. One is that we have been putting crazy money into streets and everything near roundabouts and so on, but we have not been giving the resources to the government departments and ministries. What Mr. Murillo is faced with is an under-resourced department where they are basically left on their own to try and fight a problem which is a huge social problem. He said on television that he was asking for cameras so he could see the building name from different, even cameras they don't provide. So the issue is that we have been squandering resources, Marlene, in areas where did we really need a $40 million road from airport to Miley? Really that's an urgency? So let me make this other point. The second very important point as we get ready to change government, and government will change, is that the country is suffering a serious problem. It is that we do not have managers. You need management. We have 2,000 police officers. How many of the persons who are in charge of police stations, in charge of big districts and so, are trained in management, human resources, financial resources, and the whole gambit of management? The lack of management is a very, very serious problem in this country. Whichever party takes over the government, they need to really look on the problems that we are having, because those problems are highlighting our inability. It's unfair if we just left the prisons back there. There is no oversight. There is no, I mean, it really is a bad situation.
You have had a whole lot of exposure to what happens at the Kobe Foundation. You're a defense attorney. You work with people for many years.
The prisoners, they call
you
me.
They call you, yes. Now, you have heard, I'm sure, over the past week, all the allegations that are being made against the Kobe Foundation, abuse in many different instances. What are your thoughts on this? Have you encountered situations where you feel in any way that prisoners are having their rights abused at the foundation?
Yes, there is widespread rights of abuse.
In what way?
Primarily in the arbitrary manner in which prisoners are punished. We need to make this important.
What type of punishment?
I'll come there right now. We need to make the important point to everybody in this country. A person is punished by the courts of this land by taking away your freedom. When they send you to jail, this big complex that requires massive management and oversight, when the courts send you back there, that is the punishment. They have deprived you of your liberty, which is probably the second most important right that anybody has. Your right to your life, and after that, your right to your liberty. The courts take away your liberty. It's not for them to be punishing you. You get punished in the prison when you commit an infraction against the prison rules, clearly, because it's an institution, just like a school, like anywhere else, so we have to follow rules. There is an area in the prison which is called administrative segregation.
Yes.
ADSEG.
Actually, I'm going to send you the website to Netflix. They did a documentary.
I've seen it.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
All right. The one thing they did not see was AGSEG.
Yeah. They were speaking more about the length of time people were on remand, how overcrowded it was, the world's worst prison.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you can't take human beings. A young man, I wish I could call his name, but it might not be fair. He is suing the prison department and the government of Belize. Remember the young man that was raped in prison? He successfully sued the government, although this chance Crowder Ogatiano paid a man $1, where he is suicidal and they get psychiatric treatment. But
what is your issue with the administrative segregation section?
Sorry?
The administrative segregation section, which, as we know, this is the area, to put it into context, this is the area that the inmates who escaped left. They were being held in that area, and that is basically like your punishment section, right?
The whole.
Okay. So what is your issue with it? You said that that was never shown in the documentaries.
This is something primitive over 100, 200 years ago. You don't treat human beings like this. They are like dogs. The conditions were required to sleep.
You have seen it?
Yeah.
Explain, describe it to us. I haven't.
Well, you have to, listen, you have to live with the insects and the roaches and the scorpions and the ants and things like that. You're a human being, you know, man. You get trouble when you come back here. No, give no trouble. There are many ways to punish prisoners, but treat you like a dog. This society need to check themselves. Let me tell you that. Let me just mention something. Over the weekend, a police officer is with her family, including a minor. Drugs are found in the vehicle. Her explanation is that she had just borrowed the vehicle from somebody to go somewhere. Okay, what happens? She says that the Corozal police deprived her of her right to make a phone call. Worse than that, do you know they are going to charge the minor along with all of them for drug trafficking? The minor is in control of the adults? Is that the law? Of course not. The minor is there because she's under the control of the adults, not the other way around. Tails don't wag dogs. Why are you going to put a stigma on a minor by charging her for drug trafficking? And if the magistrate does not give bail, she goes to prison. Prison is not a hotel. You know, Mr. Murillo is in charge of one of the most dangerous places where there is not sufficient resources to these people.
So, bringing it back, you have concerns about the way the punishment is administered and in the length of time, the space that they're put in, the treatment that they receive. Explain it to us so we can understand.
All right, let me start off by saying to you that the United Nations adopt what is called the Nelson Mandela rules.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela's face, Mr. Murillo has been...
Right at the main entrance.
Yes, he has been progressive enough to highlight that and to say one of the things that Nelson Mandela says about a society.
Yeah.
Listen, you know how we judge a society? We judge a society by the way it treats its less fortunate people. When you see so-called, sorry to use the word, crazy people, they walk around and they eat out a dirt box, that's a reflection upon we. When you see, and let me tell you something, institutions, including prisons all over the world, are fighting with this problem. COVID, for example, showed that where there were places where you look after the elderly, they left the elderly like they left them to die by the dozens. They find them at the back of truck and all kind of things, just left them for dead. This is a problem. We know it's a problem. You have to have a mechanism where there are visiting justices who actually go and visit the prison and check on the people there. That is the law, you know. No JP go to prison, go check on nobody. There is no oversight. There is no ministry really responsible for the prisons. They abandoned that long time. Who is the minister responsible for the prisons? Nobody even know.
Wouldn't that fall under national security?
Well, you know that because you're an educated journalist. The public don't know that. But our point is this, Marlene. You have these institutions, children's home, elderly, prisons. You know we don't have no crazy house. We don't have a hospital for mentally ill people in this country.
There's a unit in Belmopan, but it's very small.
It's not only small, nobody is admitted to it. So here you have a massive institution where the bodies are back there, along with a lot of people who know business back there. And there is rules and regulations internationally sanctioned. And in our laws, the prison rules, as to how you treat people when you give trouble. You can't arbitrarily tell somebody they're going 3 months back at Agse. 3 months, no visit, no... Aye, man, come on, we bigger and better than here. We better than that.
Some people may be watching and saying, well, you've been one of the most well-known defense attorneys. You visit the prison, you go see your clients. How come you never brought this up before?
Who says that I have not been publicly writing, raising this issue, trying? How you think John Woods ended up being in charge of the prisons? You could talk to his son. John Woods was like a saint. I wish they would put him up to the Pope for being a saint. He had deep Christian values. Running a prison, listen, that name business and no minister responsible for police. And cold-hearted people, no business in charge of an institution. We are human beings. You see those buildings? In fact, we're not going into all of that. The point is that we are required to be our better selves, that we can do better than what is going on in this country. This is not Mr. Murillo's fault. He's not getting the support. He does not have the resources. And they do not have no kind of oversight. You must have oversight of all institutions. Let me come back to a point that I'm making. The police in this country, there are 2,000 police. The army, there are 900. 2,000 police. Builders in Belmopan have an advertisement where they speak about quantity and quality. We're not going for quality, you know, with a quantity, a lot of police. We need to do better than what is happening. You know why, Marlene? Let me tell you, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. In a village, I think it's San Victor, the police supposedly go and check on some report or information that there is uncustomed goods at a home in a village. You know what end up? They beat up everybody in the house. Not just slap them, whap them up, shot one in the belly with a rubber bullet, and supposedly
We reported it on the news, yes.
Okay, how could that happen? In the name of Jesus, how do you go and go check for on custom goods and beat up everybody? And you know what that the police explanation and excuse? The family want to hold them hostage, want to disarm them. What nonsense is that?
Well,
so let me tell you what
I'd always had a question there as to whether or not there was even an internal investigation to verify what the police claimed was their version. And I think that that's always something we should ask first. How do you verify the two different accounts?
You jump straight to the issue. That is where I was leading. There is no independent oversight and check and balance in these departments and these places.
And we must, I think sometimes too, and this is where I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the discussion that's taking place on the prison. You know, we're selfish. We look after what's our interest. You know, if I'm in charge of a group of people, I may stand up for them very quickly without considering that I may have people who don't necessarily follow through with what they're supposed to do. Clearly, you know, the prison officials speak of what they do, the best that they can. The people who have been in the system speak of how they were ill-treated. The public on the outside is saying, well, is it a rehabilitation as it has been, a rehabilitation center as it has been touted? Is it better treatment compared to, I mean, I remember those stories from way back when to what the prison was before. I mean, where do you stand on this? What kind of clarity can you offer? Is it that they're doing the best that they can with the resources, but still perhaps abusing their power to a certain extent? How do you put it into perspective with the experience that you have?
I watched a long line on the Northern Road recently. Long line as I passed on, so like 30 odd, 40 odd vehicles. There is a saying that if you give a little boy one hammer, either all over the place they look for nail and whop every nail where you see. If you say to police officers you didn't want checkpoint, and you kind of do a one in, one out, you just double check, and eventually they want to check every vehicle. It don't matter that you try reach, release it if you get their work. It don't matter that you're trying to go home after a hard day, they want to check every vehicle. Once you put them there. Once you put somebody in uniform, once you give, listen, it is written by Lord Acton, all power, all forms of power corrupt. And when you read somebody have absolute power, as we have been inching towards, you get absolute corruption. When you have prison officers who have a power over other human beings, there are going to be those prison officers who are going to abuse it. That is the nature of human beings. And that is why you have management systems. That is why you have people who are trained in dealing with this matter. You have to know how to de-escalate. You have to know, man, I could tell
So I hear two suggestions from you. One is definitely looking at the resource issue, because as you pointed out, there aren't enough cameras. There's always a need for additional resources. But secondly, you pointed out something important, that there should be some sort of autonomous oversight body that checks in and makes sure that everything is functioning the way it should.
Yes, Marlene. Okay. That is the crux of the matter. And I want to repeat myself by saying it is required in all areas where you will have abuse. That with a young, listen, can I tell you something? You know the shocking thing about Jamaica? I had the opportunity to live there as a young man, and then when I got back and studied, I lived there. Do you know in 2 polls, not 1, 2 polls, the majority of Jamaican people say that their country was being better managed under the British colonial. Can you imagine, of all places, Jamaica? If you were to ask, the older folks in this country, what you remember of the British and what you see they happen now, you know they would tell you that under the British the country was being managed. You know the British, they had people that go around, they drop oil in your drum. We had drum and vat in our yard at Wagner Lane. They come and they check. They check, you know. Nobody don't feel like they're responsible for anything. It's a free country. Right. When you start to treat human beings that kind of way, whether they are children in those, listen.
All right. Well, we thank you.
Yes,
for coming in.
You know, can I just say one little 1 minute thing? Less than a minute. Last year, thanks to Amalia Mai, Channel 5 remembered Miss Leah Patnett on Wagner Lane. And they turned up and they interviewed her, and people brought cake and they brought wine, and she have her full memory. And do you know that on the 13th of December, if God is willing, Miss Leah will be 107 years of age.
Wow.
And that the NICH, they also need some oversight. They need to go and sit down and film and talk to her and hear who all used to live the Wagner Lane 100 years ago and 50. And we really do for we country a big disservice. But thanks for having me, and
thanks for weighing in on these issues. We appreciate it, and of course, stay safe. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we will continue talking about what's happening at the prison, this time with the CEO of the Kobe Foundation. So please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Voltex Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.